Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. This is a really weird place to do a presentation, but I'm loving it. And I'm loving Hamish's energy, and I hope I don't disappoint you guys because I don't really know what I'm doing here, but it's great to be here. I did look at previous keynote speakers of this conference, and shat my pants a little bit and thought, oh my God, can I even live up to that? So I did ask Hamish to caveat my introduction by letting you know that I know nothing about cloud computing. So, but that's okay. I hope what I present to you today is useful. When Hamish and I did sort of catch up about, the poor Latency conference, we're going to have to find someone local to give the keynote. What are we going to do? And I did agree to help out and maybe sort of frame it around, I guess, the types of things that we do with startups all the way up to bigger corporates within the WA Data Science Innovation Hub, which is really focused on, how do you build human-centric types of products and services within your business, and how do you always keep the customer front of mind. So it's very sort of design thinking kind of base, but I thought it did resonate with this conference, and I did sort of pull up the sort of the tagline that the conference is dedicated to the people, the teams, cultural values, etc., required to build and operate products in the cloud. But what about the people you're building it for? What about your customers? What about the end users? Do you think about them? Do you have empathy for them? And what does that actually really mean to think about them? So I want to sort of delve a little bit into that today. I want to give you some sort of quite practical experience. I'm going to run through a pretty generic type of case study, which everyone can relate to, that you can hopefully sort of take away and really bring back into your own organisations, and look at maybe some sort of tech elements and cloud-based product services that you could do around it. So a little bit about me. That's me up there, a little bit different. That's my KPMG profile, very corporate. So as Hamish said, I did start out as a neuroscientist. So my PhD was looking at neuroplasticity, so the way that the brain changes itself. Which was really fascinating, and through that process, what I learnt was that, doing a PhD, doing any sort of scientific endeavour, you collect a truckload of data, and you have to do a truckload of stats and all your modelling around those stats to either prove or disprove your hypothesis. So it became probably less about the experiments and more deep diving into the data that I was collecting. And then I realised that a life in academia doesn't really pay very well. So I moved into management consulting and spent 13 years in management consulting at PwC, EY and KPMG. I kept moving thinking it would get better, and then I realised it doesn't. So I left. And I went to run the WA State Government's new Data Science Innovation Hub, and I've been in that role for roughly 2 years now. So I reckon the first 6 months of it, when I was said to state government and Curtin University funds it, I'm like, so what is this? And they're like, we don't know, you work it out. So I spent the first 6 months really talking to organisations across WA, so all the way from startups doing cool stuff in data to SMEs just trying to understand how they can use data better, to large organisations that were really sort of at the cutting edge of data science, and asking them what is it that they needed. So a lot of it is sort of around skills and capability building, but for the data scientists themselves, it was, how do we actually define the problem that we're trying to solve with this data? How do we talk to the executives and really, from their point of view, say how this actually is going to generate value? Can you teach us some of those design thinking type of tools? So that is a lot of what we do in the hub, and a lot of what I've done throughout my career is really that sort of human-centred design, and I sort of draw on my neuroscience background around that as well. And it does really resonate. So It resonates with the data scientists that I work with, so helping them understand how important empathy is in the work that they do. So it's all well and good building a machine learning algorithm, but what's it all for? If it doesn't help anyone, if no one wants it, if it's not going to return value to that business, then what's it all for? And it really helps a lot with SMEs that are probably struggling a little bit with where can they get value from their data. So we use that a lot around SMEs to look at their sort of customers and maybe the pain points their customers have, or even the pain points that they have in their own business. So really what I want to do today is then sort of run through how to do that, how to really sort of draw empathy using a case study. So as I said, the key focus for starting any development of a product service is really around that user focus. And design thinking in tech, it's used widely now in tech. I'm sure a number of you have used it. But what it is trying to do is to counteract your own personal bias and those human biases that you have with creativity. So you hear so many times someone saying, I've got this amazing idea because it's a problem to me. So I'm going to go and I'm going to develop a startup and everyone in the world is going to want to buy it. It's going to be amazing, you know. And you build your MVP and you get to the point of piloting and then people are like, this is shit. I don't want this. This is not a problem for us. So why spend all that time? Why not really understand that up front? Excuse my swearing, but I felt like it was an okay crowd to do that. Generally wouldn't. So this is the process that we use within the Data Science Hub, which is very much modelled on the Innovation Central design thinking process. So at the Hub, we mainly spend time on the front two. So the empathy and the define. It's amazing how many times we see companies that are not defining the problem right. So they're defining it with a very internally looking view and not thinking about, you know, the empathy part of it. What do my customers want? What do the users actually want? So we spend most of the time on the front two. What we find is companies jump straight to the ideate, and I hate that word, ideation, what does that mean? And I used to do that so much at KPMG, would run ideation workshops. Let's go in and ideate, you know, let's bring everyone together and energise the room and we'll do some awesome icebreaker things and it will be great and we'll come up with these amazing ideas. But we'd left off the first two. So they sort of had a problem that they were sort of trying to solve. So it's the bulk of the work needs to be put in probably the front, the empathise and then the define parts of your product development. That's empathy. Brain and heart working together. I like that picture, I just put it in there. So one of the things that we use a lot is what we call journey mapping, and this really helps you to sort of empathise with the end user, the customer, around what are the key touch points that someone goes, especially where it works really well with a buying decision. I was actually at a function last night and I was talking to a guy, Steve Carulli, who is the founder of a cloud-based property management tool called Cirrus 8. And I was saying to him, and he's not a software engineer, he's not a developer, but he was a property manager. And he said, you know, in his line of work, there was only two service providers that were running property management platforms. Neither of them were in the cloud, and they were really inflexible. And he's like, there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a more agile way to do that. Let's build something in the cloud. But before he did that, I said, well, what sort of do you define as the key thing to your success? So now this product is going out globally. They've got contracts in New York, London. I said, what is it? He said, we spent so much time making sure that this just wasn't a problem for us. Making sure that we went out and actually really scoped, what is the problem with the current technology? What are the things that really annoy you about that technology? What would you like to see improved? What is your requirement around your managing property assets? What do you actually do from a day-to-day basis? I was like, fantastic. I can use that in my speech tomorrow. Good. So really it's mapping out that customer journey. So laying out the journey which stakeholders take when involved with the service or the product. And it throws out so many things that you may not have even realised were pain points or problems within that buying decision. So the idea of journey mapping and digital transformation is nothing new, so a lot of companies already do it. It can take a bit of an effort, but as much as I hate putting Uber and Airbnb as examples, I think there's a reason that people keep bringing them up time and time again. So these guys, what's interesting about these guys is they actually all mapped the customer journey. So what does the customer do, for Uber for example, to get from A to B? What do they actually need to do? They need to decide that they're going to go somewhere. They need to book a car. They need to get in that car. That car takes them exactly where they need to go, and then they pay that person. Similar for Spotify, Airbnb. It's quite a defined sort of map process in which that customer journey takes. But what is interesting about these companies and what is so disruptive about these companies is that while they all require assets, so cars, accommodation for Airbnb, a sort of radio station for Spotify, none of them own the assets. So it's the technology that has disrupted them. So they were able to map out that customer journey and say, okay, what are the key touch points that customer needs? What are the pain points? Oh my God, I can't book anything online. It's so annoying. I don't know when my car's coming. I call the taxi company. So you can start to see how really understanding the journey and then working out the pain points of the customers, you can come up with really disruptive solutions. None of these are rocket science. It's just these guys got there first. So you can very basically map out a customer journey. This is a very basic example of what we do when we catch a flight. We plan, we book, there's pre-flight, fly, arrive. But this, whilst it sort of tells you what the journey is, it doesn't go into enough detail. And I love data, so what we want to do is we want to actually collect data around this. We want to prove our hypotheses around what a customer actually does. So I'm going to give you an example today and step you through how you'd build a customer journey map using what everyone has done, although not doing any time soon, but travelling on a rail network. So trying to get from point A to B, trying to build a holiday, what does that actually look like for a customer? And this is an example that was done by Rail Europe, where they had identified there was some issues where customers they were sort of going online and they were looking at planning their holidays, but to get that customer right through to the booking phase, a lot was sort of dropping off, and they really wanted to understand why. So here, these are the key principles that I'll run through of how to build a journey map. So, the first one, data. It's so important to have qualitative and quantitative data. So qualitative, I mean going out there and actually talking to your customers, interviewing them, really understanding what are their decision-making processes around their buying behaviour or their use behaviour. What do they actually do from point to point, and what are the kind of key pain points in that? And then you can do quantitative data through surveys, field research and the like. So this is just an example. We all know what qualitative and quantitative data is. So the next one is then identifying all the touch points. So when we work with companies, we probably don't do it extensively, but you can map out all the touch points that you sort of deem exist within a customer journey. And then really identify the critical ones. What are those critical touch points that people need? So for example, it's a bit hard to see, but here, so what does someone do when they're booking a rail ticket? They research and plan. They then shop online, so they have a number of channels in which they can do that. So website, they may call someone, customer relations, and also bearing in mind who your users are, like demographics can play a big sort of part of this as well. You book, you need to get your pre-travel documents, you need to get your ticket somehow, you travel, and then you've got post-travel. And so if you map all that out, really understanding those kind of critical stages within the process. And then it's really important to identify the lens through which you're looking at. Some sort of form of persona that you can give it that really sort of highlights what are the key aspects of the types of people or the types of customers, the types of users that you've got there. So for this example, people choose rail travel because it is convenient, easy and flexible. So certain things that you know about your customers that you can group together. It may be, if you have really distinct types of users, you may have to map out separate customer journeys. The next one is then mapping out the actual journey the customer takes. And not just mapping it out, but really highlighting the key, most important parts of the journey. So don't just do a step by step by step by step. What are the critical parts of that customer journey you need to map out? And what are the issues in the journey, and what are things that are not fully considered? So this is the example of catching the rail. So what are the key things? And this will come through all your data, right? So this is what your data is telling you. So this is what your interviews, your surveys and the like have told you. So people want the itinerary confirmed. That's really important. They want to understand what their delivery options are. They need to have a raft of payment options. They need to then have some way to review and confirm. So what's come out is customers really need things confirmed. And maybe that's because older people catch rail in Europe, I don't know. They just need, that's like my parents, need it all confirmed and lined up. And they might need to call someone if they're having any challenges. And then what about issuing the tickets? What are the key things? Can you print the tickets at home? What if you need to change your plans? How do you see the activities that you've actually planned so that you can then follow on to research hotels? What about people that want actual hard tickets? What do you do there? Can people print their tickets at the station? What about refunds? And how does it then all integrate if you need to buy additional tickets? So it's not a pure step-by-step, but from the data, it's pulled out the key aspects of that journey mapping. And then the data. So mapping out, I guess, what all the data says. What does your qualitative insight say and what are your quantitative information? So these are the types of things for this one that you'd look at. So the qualitative is really understanding what are people thinking and feeling and doing. What does that actually look like? What are their pain points? So here, for example, people are excited to go on Eurail. So how could Rail Europe sort of really capitalise on that excitement? I don't want to make the wrong choice. I'm worried if I make the wrong choice, what does that actually mean? So then what do you have to build into your tech to make sure that people have confidence and comfort around making a mistake, being able to go and change, giving all that information and making changing bookings easy? And then the experience is really around that survey, that more quantitative data. So on what level is it important that things are enjoyable? How relevant is Rail Europe in terms of the booking? How helpful are they? All those sorts of things. So then you can see how the do, the think, the feel, all that data can start coming together and you map that across your journey. So it all starts linking. And then you map the key highlights and takeaways, which is quite easy. Once you have the whole map out there, once you really understand what are those pain points, what are customers really worried about here, then you can start to really identify what are some of the issues at each stage of the process. So it's really important that people feel supported in creating their own solution. So all this is going to be tech, right? A lot of the solutions are really going to be built into the Rail Europe platform. How do you enable people to plan over time? How do you accommodate planning and booking in Europe too, so that you're across the board? How do you allow customers to understand what sort of hotels are around them when they get off the station? So you can start seeing how easy it is now to pick out where you can add significant amount of value in your product and your platform that you've got for customers. So that's essentially what it looks like. You've got the lens through which you're looking at. You've got your journey model. So what are the customers actually doing? Then your data, what are they thinking and feeling? And what is the experience for using the Rail Europe platform? And then you pull out your key takeaways. What are the real opportunities that we can distill down on? How am I going for time, by the way? I do have my phone over here. I'll just have a quick... Huh? Good? Okay. How many minutes? Oh, my timer. Great. That helps. I'm sorry, just totally ignoring that big number there. Yeah, so this is I guess, extremely valuable in then pulling out areas that you can problem solve and focus on. How might we use tech essentially to really address these problems? It may sound hard, difficult. It's time consuming, I'm not going to lie, like to get all this information, to go out and survey customers, to conduct interviews, to understand what sort of information you actually want to gain from them. It is time consuming, but it's not rocket science, it's not neuroscience. It's not really hard, but it does take an effort, but you'll find that you'll get so much value out of it. And it won't just be one innovation that you'll get out of it. You can innovate across the entire customer journey and the entire customer experience. You could build whole new companies out of really understanding key pain points that people have in a journey, hence Uber, Airbnb, Spotify. So what then? So you've got all this great information, and even I see companies that have all this great sort of customer journey mapping, and they still go back to the problem that they have in their own mind. They still just formulate and go, oh yeah, well we kind of knew that and this is the problem. It's like, well, is that really the problem? So it's really important to define the problem really well, and then test that problem again with your customers, the users, whoever may be engaging with that problem, and making sure that that actually resonates. People go, yeah, no, actually, it's crap that I booked something on your rail and I don't know where my tickets are and I don't know which is the closest hotel. So really distilling down what the problem is. And it's really good to do this in multidisciplinary teams. So this is where you can bring potential customers into a workshop, developers, whoever. Bring them all together and work on the problem definition. So we use this sheet a lot within the Data Hub. So looking at just simple questions that you can really start fleshing out the problem. So I've tried to give it a go very quickly with one of the Rail Europe problems. So one of the things that I picked out, so what is the key problem we're trying to resolve? And why is this important? So travellers cannot plan, shop and book in a seamless transaction. It's clunky, they've got to go from one stop to the other. If they leave their computer, it doesn't understand where they sort of left off. They can't shop for hotels in the same platform, those sorts of things. And it's important because travellers are getting frustrated. This is a pain point for them, it annoys them. But also, purchase engagement rates drop. So from a business point of view, that's not good. If someone's dedicated enough to get on your website to try and book rail and then they throw their hands in the air and go, oh, it's all too hard, I don't understand this, then that's a massive problem for Rail Europe. Hence travellers and Eurail. So it's a problem on both sides. So what would be the impact of solving this problem? And this is where you can kind of really understand, is it even worth it? Should I even be bothered solving this problem? Is the impact great enough to our business, to the customers? So if you've got greater customer satisfaction and a higher initiation to purchase rates, then yeah, this is significant. We want to bolster customer satisfaction. We want more people to come back to our website and book rail. And we want, obviously, profits to go up. Who doesn't? Whose input do we think we need to solve this problem? So this is really critical. So this becomes a tech problem, right? So it's a web-based interface with the customer. So we obviously need tech developers in there working out what is the best way that we can change our platform, that we can change the interaction that customers have with the way that they purchase tickets. We need travellers in there, right? So we always need to solve these problems with constantly bringing the customer, the user, back in. Is this right? Are we solving it the right way? Is this still a problem? What do you think about this if we tackled it from this way? And then the management. So whoever is going to be the people giving you the money to actually tackle the problem or develop the solution. And then it's always good. I find this one the hardest. Can we think of this problem in a different way? My brain just goes, well, I've thought of the problem and I can't deviate. I'm not creative in that way. So that's why, again, it's really good to have multidisciplinary teams. Can you actually think of the problem in a different way? And the whole reason behind that is, I guess, sort of that divergent thinking. Thinking differently and then distilling down, converging your ideas again into a solution. So the booking system doesn't remember an individual traveller's preference from plan through to book. So again, that's a problem, but you can see how that might be a slightly different solution. And then can you think of 5 ways to solve the problem? So 5 different ways to solve the problem. I came up with 2. The booking platform is integrated with shopping and planning, so it's a seamless transaction across the platform. The planning tool automatically identifies rail routes to book and key shopping needs. Build in AI predictive analytics into the platform. But the key to all of this is ensuring that at the end of it, you have a problem statement and that the team in which is working on this worksheet really understands and agrees on what that problem is. And then you're away. And then the fun starts, the ideation, the icebreakers, all that good stuff. So we do some ideation within the Data Hub, and it's really around, there's so many ideation tools online. You can get 1 million of them. Google ideation tools and so many things will come up. And it's really around getting your brain to think divergently. So coming up with crazy, weird, wonderful ideas. It doesn't matter what they are. Putting all those up on butcher's paper, whatever, Post-its, whatever you do in ideation workshops, and then looking at them all and going, okay, let's converge our thinking. And it might be part of a way out idea with a more sensible idea is the best solution for you to come up with. So I encourage you all to, that one's a Board of Innovation ideation toolkit. We've got many within the Data Hub, happy to share any ideation toolkits with you, but hundreds out there. And they're fun. You know, it's fun to get in a group and start throwing out crazy ideas, doing some left brain, right brain stimulation type of exercises, getting you to think outside the box is all good. And then the next stage that we don't do so much, but relatively easy for you guys to do, you're all software developers and the like, but is to start actually prototyping some of this stuff. So giving it a go. You've done all the hard work now. You really understand the pain points of your customers. You really understand what the problem is. You've come up with some pretty cool solutions to those problems. Also, you know, make sure with the problems you are chunking them, you know, so you're not trying to solve the whole thing at once. What are the things that you can do sort of in isolation and build some MVPs around that, some prototypes around that. So these are just some examples of online tools that we recommend people can use. You guys would no doubt have 1 million others. But just start playing around with it, seeing sort of what resonates, what sort of works. And that's essentially what design thinking is, right? So it's not rocket science, it's not, it's, I don't know, it's not like it's not common sense. To me, you know, any of this sort of stuff, they just put a new name on it, but really it's all common sense, like data science. I was like, haven't we been using data for years and years and years to solve problems? Is that what data science is? But it's really invaluable. I've seen it work time and time and time again really well for, especially in tech, for coming up with really great understanding of what your customers want, what those potential solutions could look like. So I encourage you all to have a go. Please do. If you need any resources, you can always contact us at the Data Hub. We run all our workshops free of charge. We're state government funded, so it is a free service. And whilst we have sort of a data science, obviously, focus, we don't really know whether solutions are going to be a data analytics solution when we get started on a lot of these design thinking processes. So I do welcome you all to get in contact with us. We're happy to run workshops with you. We're happy to provide more advice and give any sort of help that you need along the way.
Thank you. Thank you, Liz.
You.